Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Admiral Professor Jayanath Colombage as he has taken the seat, and I also requested the other distinguished speakers, Dr. Vijay Sakhuja, Director, School of Integrated Coastal and Maritime Security Studies, Rashtriya Raksha University, India, who will be joining us virtually. First Admiral Dr. Tay Lap Leong, Senior Director, Comprehensive Defense and Security Research Center, Malaysian Institute of Defense Security. Ms. Shanika Dissanayake, Additional Secretary, Environment and Climate Change and Protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause for the 5th session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ayubowan, good afternoon. Since I have a gentleman from Malaysia, Selamat Siang, welcome to the panel. The organizers secretly told me that they kept the best for the last, right? So in order for me to do that, or rather they told me they want to finish the Galle Dialogue 2023 with a bang. And to do that, I have 3 great speakers. One joining us online, my dear friend, Dr. Vijay Sakhuja. He's right now online. He's a scholar, a former naval officer, running many think tanks in India and many other countries. Great to have you, Dr. Vijay. It's lovely to see you at least on screen. Then I have First Admiral Dr. Tay Yap Leong, a gentleman admiral from Malaysia. He brings in the perspective of Malaysia and probably the ASEAN, because this is a critically important region now when we talk about collaborative ocean governance, because ASEAN has taken the leadership in blue economy and maritime strategy for the Indo-Pacific regions. And also I have Mrs. Shanika Dissanayake, Additional Secretary, Environment, Climate Change, Protocol and Economic Affairs. You can see the portfolio, many jobs. She will be talking about a critically important aspect, that is the regional framework for sustainable ocean governance. It is double importance because Sri Lanka assumed the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association chair, just 2 days ago. She was in the driving seat. So I don't think I can have a better person to talk about this regional collaboration or enforcement for sustainable ocean than the 3 panelists given to me. But at the outset, I would like to pose some questions for the panel as well as to the audience. If we find answers at the end of this session, I think we would do justice to the session. Number 1 question, why do we need ocean governance? We heard a lot during the last 2 days, a lot of deliberations. So my question is, why do we need ocean governance? Is the ocean an ungoverned space? We heard the Indian Ocean is relatively peaceful, relatively calm. And do we need to strengthen enforcement mechanisms? We heard during the morning, how we do this thing with civilian, military participation and collaboration. Then question number 3, does collaborative ocean governance mean we exploit all ocean resources at once and become rich? The answer obviously is no, because we have no right to rob anything from our future generation. We know that the ocean is vast. Ocean is the driver of socio-economic growth, and undoubtedly the Indian Ocean is becoming the key ocean together with the Western Pacific, categorically I say together with the Western Pacific in the 21st century. Then the question lead to another question, a series of questions. Are the world and the oceans transforming into a novel international order or a novel economic order? Then are we ready for such a novel or novel economic order in the world? Are we experiencing a crisis of identity and functionality? And also, we all know that Indian Ocean is a very rich ocean in maritime commerce and also in maritime resources. However, This ocean is the richest ocean in maritime strategies. Practically every major or aspiring major power in the world has a strategy for Indian Ocean together with Pacific Ocean. That is why I say this ocean is the richest ocean for maritime strategies. Now, where do we end up having so many strategies by so many players? I have a simple explanation. We do have a strategic competition in the Indian Ocean. This competition leads to strategic convergence, some against the other. This leads to strategic ambiguity. This leads to strategic dilemma for small states like Sri Lanka, because we can't afford to bandwagon with one against the other. We can't hedge one against the other. So how do we really balance this strategic competition? Now, we can all agree that we need the international rules-based maritime order, period. We all need it. And we all can agree we need freedom of maritime commerce, freedom of maritime navigation, freedom of overfly, and freedom to exploit resources. We need that. And practically, all these strategies that I mentioned, in the beginning they talk about this. However, when you go down the line, you find some of these strategies are inclusive nature. Some of these strategies are trying to contain one power or other powers. Now, that is where the problem comes. That is where the crisscrossing of these strategies giving problems to countries like Sri Lanka. Now, in addition to the strategic competition and the convergences, non-traditional threats are very much prevalent in the Indian Ocean. We remember in 2009 to 2012, small group of Somali pirates hijacked the entire merchant fleet of the world, so to say. And how much effort we had to put in to contain the piracy. The good news is now the piracy is down. However, we don't know if we leave our guard now whether it will bounce back or not. So therefore, we have a problem. And today we are going to talk about three key areas. Dr. Vijay will talk about grey zone operation. Grey zone means between peace and war. Everything happening between peace and war, grey zone operation. And then Admiral from Malaysia, he will talk about the Malaysian experience and also sharing how they manage ocean resources in a collaborative manner. And then Shanika will bring an idea, how do we achieve this through IORA and BIMSTEC. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the plan for the afternoon, and the good news is that this is the final session, so it's easy to keep you awake, because after this we are now going in our separate ways. So it is going to be a very interesting session, very important session, and we have to come to a conclusion after this whether we need collaborative ocean governance or not. So now let me start with the presenters. We will go according to the schedule. The first presenter is Dr. Vijay Sakhuja, joining us online, I presume from India, because he is a globe-trotter. Probably, I hope, Doctor, you are in India. So over to you, Dr. Vijay, to share your thoughts on a very important topic, the grey zone operations, the concepts, parameters, and what to expect in this grey zone operation. Vijay, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and a namaskar. It's honor and privilege for me to participate in the Galle Dialogue 2023. I must apologize for not being physically present because of some health conditions. I'm in the recovery mode, but I will try and catch up, and with the same passion I would share with you my thoughts on a subject that has been given to me called UNCLOS and grey zone operations. So if you notice, these are the two key words, UNCLOS and grey zone operations. And I'm going to talk about what is this concept, what is this grey zone that we are now encountering? Who is practicing? What does it mean? Who are the actors? And finally, I will delve into, or rather dive into, the legal aspects of gray zone operations. For that, let me go back very, very briefly into last 3 decades. I think before the Cold War ended, we had a definitive pattern. There was competitive strategy at play, and the naval strategy was designed, tailored, and being practiced for the purpose of Cold War. Navies were more focused to support their commitments to NATO, the Warsaw Pact, and those who stayed outside the so-called the pacts or the organizations were again watching carefully, and they had no scope to think in terms of beyond what was actually happening because it was a contestation. But as the Cold War ended, they now began to see for themselves where they are. They had national commitments. It's not that the world had become into a relative peace. There were sporadically things happening around. And here I must recall very, very briefly how our whole Sri Lanka Navy very successfully defeated the LTT and literally decimated them. This was while the Cold War was on, it was burgeoning, it was going on, yet there was these things happening. And after the Cold War, now states realize that they have maritime zones because during the Cold War they had accrued under the 1982 UNCLOS maritime zones. So focus shifted onto understanding and defending and trying to figure out what they were to do, particularly the navies and the coast guards, what their relative duties were and what they're going to deliver. But I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, this period was very short-lived. We ran into turmoil, 9/11, you're familiar with, and suddenly we realized all our strategies that we were thinking of in terms of national interest, in terms of maritime zones, we started moving in that direction. Countering maritime terrorism, piracy, drug smuggling, gun running, WMD proliferation, a host of illegal crime activities came into play. But it was generally agreed that no one country can address this. So we all gathered under the flag and started prosecuting violent non-state actors, countering illegal activities. So it was a great time that the navies had shut off their competitive strategies and now were thinking in terms of convergent and cooperative strategies. I'm afraid the competitive strategies did their work a decade and a half. By about 2015, it's my belief that I've started to see competitive strategies coming back into play. And now, as we are in this world, we have literally contestation going on in the South China Sea, in the Persian Gulf, the Ukraine war, and a more recent Israeli-Palestine war. Now you would notice we are back into that mode. What we are seeing is a kind of a change that has happened. Also, while this is going on, I must draw your attention that there is also a phenomenon in which the actors have chosen or are choosing to operate just below the threshold to achieve strategic objective without getting into war. And their actions, so that their actions do not attract a military reaction response from the opponent. The contemporary strategic literature labels this as, or such situations and responses as, gray zone operations. Few regions, areas, you're all familiar, and the strategic literature has labeled them as gray zone center points. They're not hot spots. I would venture to very, very carefully suggest there are situations, there are areas, regions, sub-regions where gray zone operations are being practiced overtly or covertly. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is this gray zone or the gray zone operations? Toward the horizon, I read the literature across, a lot of literature, and I came across a variety of arguments, understandings, interpretations of gray zone. And it suggested keywords came out of this research, and they came out as hybrid warfare, gray zone warfare, unrestricted warfare, irregular warfare, ambiguous warfare. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is no universally agreed upon definition for gray zone, which only adds to conceptual confusion and ambiguity surrounding gray zone warfare. Given this diverse labeling and ambiguity with this concept called gray zone and its operations, it is quite natural that there are several definitions, and one should not be surprised. And depending on what I say, where you come from, for a practitioner, it's different. For a scholar, it is different. For an observer, it is different, which I'm going to talk a little later. For a statecraft or a politician, for that matter, or a policymaker, it means different. I've listed out a variety of definitions being followed, understood, or practiced by a variety of agencies across the globe. It is in my paper, and I will not touch on that. But except that I want to bring in one definition, which is again elaborated in my paper, which takes a very expansive view. And I'm going to raise this issue. Why? Because it begins by saying gray zone operations are fluid, have origins in geopolitical, economic contestation, and is understandably driven for military action, cyber response, information operations. I have no quarrels on that. And it goes beyond. Then it talks about diplomatic and economic activities as part of gray zone operations. But these should be below so-called the kinetic use of force. It further goes on to expand, encouraging internal strife with targeted countries is gray zone operations. Subversive economic activities is gray zone operations. Support domestic and international proxies is gray zone operations. Coercive investment and bribery for political aims, gray zone operations. Hostage diplomacy is gray zone. Changes internationally recognized border, gray zone. This is, I think, quite a challenge. So let us be prepared for many such or similar definitions, which will mushroom, have mushroom, will mushroom, and we'll have to be very carefully get a clear understanding what gray zone operations are all about. Notwithstanding all these formulations, it's my belief that it is generally accepted that gray zone operations as unconventional military response to achieve strategic aims without a military conflict. Consequently, we notice gray zones are ambiguous, belligerent, coercive in action, and they do not adhere to traditional black or white dichotomy of war and peace. Instead, they fall somewhere undefined middle. The contending side remain conscious that the operations conducted are short of actual attack. I don't want to get into a war, but I'll keep troubling you, which again is like pestering, it continues, and it can be very, very defeating all the time. And it can be conducted by anybody and everybody. It could be employing regular or irregular forces, platforms where unknown, unthinkable, And then I will add to that maybe creative. We are familiar with drones, cyber threats we are living with, and unconventional tactics maneuvers only add to more confusion for both practitioner and those who want to talk about strategy. Hull bouncing, gray zone operations, sinking gun gray zone operations, using water cannon, the lowest form of being creative, of being such a funny thing that you use water cannons, is gray zone. So who are the actors? What platforms do they use? What weapons they do use? What is the concept of operations and what technologies? I'll now focus on this. The gray zone literature suggests that there are multiple actors belonging to diverse professions and trade who can be mobilized. Of course, we have we are quite familiar with the navies, the coast guard, the law enforcement agencies, maritime militia, who have probably received a lot of attention, particularly in the South China Sea. And there are several other non-state actors, stakeholders, and these could be fishermen, I'll talk about them, crews of marine scientific research who would be engaging in some kind of a suspicious activity, research vessels, civilian pilots flying aircraft, personnel employed by maritime security companies, and these are being mobilized. Depending on the configuration, the platforms are fitted with lethal and non-lethal weapons, and they are put to use against their opponent, who in most cases are poorly armed, and of course, they are at the receiving end. The toolkit is quite diverse. It could include high-end weapons, such as lasers, we've seen that in the South China Sea. Then we have water cannons I just mentioned about. And these somehow give you kind of the variety and the span or the creativity in which such tools or instruments or technologies that are being used. At least three types of tactics that I've inferred from the strategic literature or incidents and incidents. And I put them in three baskets: military versus military, aggressive maneuvers, naval boats coming, crisscrossing, troubling. In which most cases, I think they challenge the internationally accepted norms, order at sea, conduct of business. They've been labeled as risky, unprofessional, and they attract sometimes firing and warning shots. The second basket is military versus non-military gray zone tactics, and in which one-sided approach, in which the non-military vessels are at the receiving end, and they are probably hit, or for that matter, crew lives are endangered. But in one instance, I would like to share, in wanton disregard of the safety of the people on board and in violation of international law. That has been summed up very well. The third basket I'm talking about is non-military versus non-military, which involves swarm of fishing boats against a lone boat. Typical, classical harassment. Please note, cyber operations are often difficult to attribute to an author, and they can have desired effects, is yet another one that we can add to this playlist. Ladies and gentlemen, we all acknowledge fisheries are meant to do their commercial activity. And I'm sure you're in Sri Lanka, our hosts would have put up the best of the seafood for you. Rich in seafood. I was there a few months ago and I realized I was enjoying one of the finest. But these fishermen, not Sri Lankan fishermen for that matter, but fishermen who go to the high seas, etc. And some countries use them for intelligence gathering. There is a clear evidence of inseparability of civilian and military spheres, resulting in, particularly in the context of situational, or particularly in the context of fishermen. I give you a very interesting citation, or for that matter, a reading. It says, fishermen can be described as fishermen on Monday, A day later, he turns into a harasser, and 2 days later, he becomes a law enforcer. Having said that, let me quickly move on to yet another domain called the Industry 4.4 and 4.0 technologies. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, they made their debut in our naval operations. These can potentially transform, of course, naval warfare, as also gray zone operations, enhance information dominance, superior situational awareness, improved decision making, and the ability to deliver high tempo gray zone operations because the platforms can be controlled remotely and the systems can have a continuous monitoring. Many navies are investing, and potentially there is a naval transformation. But if there is a naval transformation, ladies and gentlemen, let us also be prepared for naval transformation or transformation of gray zone operation. So, having done a little review of the definition, the actors, the tools, the tactics, the kinetic, the non-kinetic, etc. part of it, let me dive into the legality associated with gray zone operations. International law, 1982 UNCLOS, National Maritime Zones Act, National Safety and Security Regulations are often cited, invoked when we discuss about maritime and naval activities. Interestingly, in some cases, gray zone operations go beyond these legalities. The competitors attempt to leverage legal ambiguities. In particular, some navies and law enforcement agencies have engaged in objectionable operations, tactics, and they continue to challenge the legal and peaceful use of the seas. Some of the rules of engagement are of concern. There is a huge embedment of coercion, but initiatives such as, which I must quickly recall, such as the 2004 Code of Conduct, Hughes Code of Conduct for unplanned encounters at sea under the WPNS, or bilateral incidents at sea agreement. These are very, very good instruments and have so far provided us some kind of a solace. But then we did not get that 100% solace, or maybe 80, 90%. Yet there are instances of gray zone, coming close quarters, all those things go on.
Doctor, you have taken 19 minutes. May I kindly request you to conclude now, please? I'm sorry to disturb.
I'm just about, pardon me, Admiral,
no,
because
sorry.
of the slow breath, I will try and conclude very, very quickly. So the 1982 UNCLOS offers us settlement of disputes, yet states prefer to disregard it in some form or the other. Let me cite out a few Law of the Seas conventions which the audience can read from my paper. Article 238, 239, Article 240 of the UNCLOS provides us some form of legality in conduct of our activities at sea. Let me quickly move on some my concluding thoughts, which I'll take not more than a minute and a quarter. First, states have diverse and even expansive understanding of concept of gray or zone, which presents political and strategic challenges, particularly for the navies and law enforcement agencies. Second, gray zone operations in most cases are sanctioned by the state, either out of choice or inevitability. Are they part of the statecraft and state attributable? This is an issue that is debatable. Third, it is no rocket science to infer that security agencies are authors of gray zone operations. They acquire and build capacities to conduct gray zone operations. Fourth, in this era of aggressive geopolitics, frequency and intensity of gray zone operations will increase at the geo-economic level as we all explore the oceans for blue economy development. Gray zone operations will become more frequent, will be visible to us. Fifth, what we need is a clear, communicated, and preemptive legal position associated with gray zone operations, which can potentially help moderate the outcomes of deliberate and inadvertent gray zone activities. I have a few suggestions. Develop a clear understanding of gray zone and its operations. Build legal capacities to prosecute gray zone operations. I think a battery of JAG officers is the best constituency. Conduct workshops on maritime gray zone operations and legal at the national, sub-regional, and at the larger level. Address maritime gray zone operations as part of your maritime and naval CBMs. Include gray zone in national security policy formulation. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry if I exceeded the time limit.
Thank you, Dr. Sakhuja. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you. So I request you to stay online because there will be a Q&A session. And now I request First Admiral Dr. Teja Leong to talk about collaborative governance for sustainable development and marine resource management, a case study of Malaysia, and I hope you will cover ASEAN region as well. Over to you, Admiral.
Selamat petang dan selamat sejahtera to all, to Honorable Moderator, Admiral Professor Jayanath, Colombage, my learned speaker, Dr. Vijay, Mrs. Shanika, distinguished audience at the Galle Dialogue 2023. It is an honor for me to privilege to be given this opportunity to present my view on the topic given, cooperative governance for sustainable developments and maritime resources management in the Malaysia context. The table of content is as shown on the slide. Basically, is the introduction of the topic, then followed by the importance of the sustained developments and marine resources management in Malaysia context, the challenges faced, the stakeholders engagements, and then also I will share some case studies and some policy recommendations, and followed by the conclusion of my topic. Cooperative governance has emerged as a promising approach to address complex environment challenges such as sustainable development and maritime resources management. In Malaysia, a country blessed with abundant marine resources, there's a need for effective governance mechanisms to become paramount, and this subtopic aims to explore the concept of cooperative governance and its relevancy in the context of sustainable developments and marine resources management for Malaysia. Malaysia is the diverse marine ecosystem face numbers of threats, including overfishing, pollutions, habitat destructions, and climate change impact. These challenges require multi-stakeholder collaboration involving government agencies, local communities, non-government organizations, and industrial players. By engaging different stakeholders in decision-making processes, cooperative governance can facilitate knowledge sharing and foster consensus building and promote transparency and accountability while ensuring sustainable outcome. This article will further derive into various aspects of cooperative governance for sustainable development and maritime resources management. The importance of the sustainable cooperative governance for sustainable development maritime resources. In Malaysia, several challenges have hindered effectiveness and implementations of the maritime protect area. In Malaysia are significantly constrained by the host of problems and challenges such as ineffective management, poor institutional capabilities, limited enforcement, absence of awareness, and poor socio-economic status, while influence the conservation of marine resources. MPA problems reflect the challenges in cooperative governance and marine resources management. Some common challenges that may arise in the cooperative governance include the lack of trust and communications among the stakeholders, conflicting interests and goals, limited financial resources, capabilities, and lack of public awareness and political will as well as inadequate legal institutional framework. The lack of trust and communication among the various stakeholders is the significant obstacles, one of it. Secondly, different agency, government bodies, and local communities often resulted in conflicting interests and objectives, leading to a disjunction of efforts and ineffective decision-making processes. Thirdly, limited finance resources pose a challenge to cooperative governance initiative. Insufficient funding hamper the implementations of cooperative policies, programs, and project aims to sustainable development and maritime resource management. Fourthly, inadequate institutional capability and expertise hinder the effective of the cooperations between the government agency, NGOs, academians, and other relevant stakeholders. Building capability through the training program and can help overcome these challenges. Fifth, the lack of awareness and understanding among the public about the importance of sustainable development, accessibles, and challenges faced in the cooperative governance. Without active engagement from the communities and individuals, it becomes difficult to hire meaningful progress towards sustainable practices. Lastly, the lack of political will have amplifying exercises to overcome inadequate legal instruments and institutional framework. A good and effective legal instrument and framework at least minimize overlapping functions and jurisdictions. Now I come to the engagement challenges. Stakeholders engagement. In the context of maritime management, a cooperative governance can involve clustering a spatial management measure, such as marine protection area based on the principle of ecological connectivity and development of enhancing cooperative governance network, which relevant stakeholders such as manager, community groups, and non-NGOs, and based on the principles of the social connectivity. And another key aspect of the stakeholder is the promoting the inclusivity and also the representations. In Malaysia, we have the 12 Malaysian Plan, in one of the such initiatives that aim to advance sustainability by guaranteeing continuous economic growth while protecting the environment, continuing Malaysia economy and a global target. In Malaysia, we have two organizations that I can share with you. One is MIMA, Malaysia Maritime Institute of Malaysia. It's policy research institute set up by the Malaysia government under the Ministry of Transport in investigating matters relating to Malaysia interests of sea and to serve as a national focal point for research in the maritime sector. And it also includes the ocean law and policy, maritime security and diplomacy, coastal and marine environment, Strait of Malacca, and also maritime economics and industrial. And the second organization is MIDAS, where I come from. It's also set up under the Ministry of Defense to investigate matters relating to Malaysia defense and security, including those within the maritime domain. MIDAS is also a think tank from Ministry of Defense, has the center that focus on more on the ongoing traditional, non-traditional threat within the maritime domain, such as national sovereignty, territorial dispute, trans-border crime, maritime legal instruments and frameworks, and so on. Now I would like to share some of the case studies successful that we can use as an example for us. First is on the Coral Triangle Initiative, which was also touched by our Admiral Pira this morning. It's a regional partner between 6 countries, including Malaysia, aimed to conservation marine biodiversity and promoting sustainable development in the Coral Triangle region in Malaysia. This has brought together various stakeholders, including government agency and local community and NGOs and academia. Another similar example is the University Malaysia Terengganu, which is in the northern east coast of Malaysia, collaborating with Aquarium KLCC to organize the coral conservation expeditions at UMT Marine Natural Resources on the Terengganu area, which is Pedong Island, we name it, involving local students, fishermen, and NGO. This expedition focus on replanting or growing corals and bringing awareness to the public on the importance of corals to maritime marine biodiversity. An example of conservation and rehabilitating critical habitat of the National Mangrove Restoration Project also is under the preview of Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment Malaysia, which has involved in multi-stakeholders comprising federal and state government, technical advice agency, research and institute of higher learning, NGOs, and as well others local community. Tree planting program with the mangrove and other suitable species along the national coastline is another project that is taken place since 2005, involving a strategic integrated approach. We go through this with the regards of overfishing, and example of Malaysia tackling this issue is through community-based co-management. Is an approach that focuses on a partnership between the government agency and local resources user, NGOs, and other stakeholders. This approach is to people-centric, community-oriented, and resources-based, where all parties share the responsibility and decision-making authority for managing the fishery in the area. Fishery co-management based on the principle that cooperations between communities and the state can lead to more effective governance of fishery resources. Example is the collaboration between the Department of Fishery Malaysia and the local fishing community in the area implementing the co-management approach. This approach empowers the local authority to actively participate in decision-making processes and related to fishing management. Basically, in our country, we have many stakeholders or so-called state governments, and they work with the local fishery department. That's how we go about, other than the central government. A policy that is recommendations for the enhancement as follow: strengthening institution framework, that's one. Promoting stakeholders' participations, and also lastly is the enhancement of transparency and accountability. All this will help us to put together governments, local community, and state governments, and followed by the NGOs to work it out together. Conclusion. In conclusion, cooperative governance holds immense potential for Malaysia's sustainable development and maritime resources management. The case study and discussion presented in the text highlighted the benefit of involving the diverse stakeholders, governments, local community, NGOs, and private sector as well. By embracing the cooperative approaches, Malaysia can achieve more effective decision-making processes. That's how we're gonna go. Another example I can give to you is that during the COVID-19 case in Malaysia, we appointed Malaysian Armed Forces to be a lead agency and bring along with other government agency, medical, medical side, the immigrations and local police and everything put into one task force, a special task force to handle the spreading of the COVID diseases in the country, and it was very successful. So these are the things that we do to ensure things go together as one. That comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Admiral. You have really managed your time well, and you saved a few minutes for us. Thank you so much. And now I invite Mrs. Shanika Dissanayake to talk about a very important aspect. I think repeatedly we heard from yesterday, regional problems need regional solutions. So she's going to talk about IORA, SAARC, and BIMSTEC. And this is further important because just 2 days ago, Sri Lanka assumed the chair of IORA. So over to you, Shanika. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So my name is Shanika Dissanayake. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I'm delighted to be here. This is the first time that I'm attending the Galle Dialogue, and I must say the deluge of information that I have, had, has had a very, very positive impact because it has been so informative. And it's a pleasure to be here because everything has gone according to clockwork. So thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to Vice Admiral UVMP Pereira, His Excellency Ambassador of Sri Lanka to Indonesia and ASEAN, His Excellency Jayanath Colombage, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. So my topic is on the regional frameworks for sustainable ocean governance, and I'm taking IORA and BIMSTEC as the case studies. As you all know, sustainability remains at the core of global action. From the SDGs and their implementation to strategized planning for future generations, decision-making in the 21st century pivots around sustainability. Oceans, of course, have remained critical areas for millennia, with numerous battles of the past fought for dominance. The ruins found on the seabed around Sri Lanka bear testimony to the past. And as many of you saw from the presentations, you can see the 2nd century BC wreck discovered at Godawaya in Sri Lanka. Today, global reliance on oceans is focused on resources, both marine and mineral, as well as the transportation and connectivity based on geography. This has resulted in a very intricate system of dependence. This dependence is, of course, not without friction, and hence needs a cogent, cooperative mechanism to ensure a lessening of concerns, removals of doubt, and the fostering of a spirit of collaboration. In an age of heightened multilateralism, with countries seeking to deepen and widen interactions, multiple avenues are being explored. It is only through collaborative efforts that mutually beneficial and sustainable solutions can be found. In re-envisioning the ocean as a development space, it is prudent for states, especially those in the Indian Ocean, to return to the core factors that bind them and thereby launch sustainable policies. The Indian Ocean Rim Association, or IORA, of which Sri Lanka just assumed the chairmanship, and we will have the chairmanship for 2 years until 2025, and the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation, in short referred to as BIMSTEC, have created platforms for a very focused engagement in a plethora of areas. Through the 2 institutional secretariats, consecutive periods of chairing these bodies, as well as the centers of excellence that some of the countries have established, and numerous initiatives, we have seen progress in strengthening multilateralism on differing scales. Through each form of engagement in both IORA and BIMSTEC, whether at the level of heads of state or government, ministerial, senior officials, or through the diverse functional bodies affiliated with both organizations, efforts have been expended to achieve our key goals and thereby enhance greater regional cooperation. Our region, as you all know, is encircled by the Indian Ocean, which is categorized as the 3rd largest body of water, or the 3rd largest ocean in the world. In both IORA and BIMSTEC, regionalism is defined in terms of geography. Hence, it is through the building of a wider community through IORA and a focused community through BIMSTEC that member states will have the ability to incorporate shared values, engage in joint research, implement a strategized plan of action, and ensure that sustainability triumphs depletion, overutilization, and the abuse of marine and mineral resources. Permit me to quickly focus on the 2 organizations of IORA, which Sri Lanka just concluded this week, and BIMSTEC, which we hosted a year ago in Colombo. A decade ago, when India was chairing IORA, 6 priority areas were identified: maritime safety and security, fisheries management, academic science and technology cooperation, trade and investment facilitation, disaster risk management, as well as tourism and cultural exchanges. All collectively play a vital role in deepening regional efforts for cooperation. This focus was further sharpened during the subsequent period when IORA was chaired by Australia. Through emphasis on the blue economy and women's economic empowerment, we saw IORA including these important cross-cutting features into programs of activities. In 2014, the IORA Sustainable Development Program was initiated to help the least developed countries and thereby boost connectivity, sharing of best practices, and ensuring that all countries are included in the development drive. In marking IORA Day this year, the Secretary General of IORA, Dr. Salman Al-Farisi, in highlighting the nature of the grouping, identified IORA as a crucial platform for fostering economic cooperation and sustainable development. He called for a more focused and sustainable development. Now I shall quickly move on to the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. When reflecting on the progress made through BIMSTEC, we find a grouping that is primarily dependent on the Bay of Bengal and that has attempted to cooperate through 14 priority areas. Initially focusing on trade and investment, transport and communication, energy, tourism, technology, and fisheries, the BIMSTEC organization in 2005 added further the areas of agriculture, public health, poverty alleviation, counter-terrorism and transnational crime, environment, and disaster management. At the 11th ministerial meeting in New Delhi in 2008, the 14th priority area of climate change, which is a very critical area, was identified, with each BIMSTEC member state tasked with leading in specified priority areas. At the BIMSTEC summit last year, chaired by Sri Lanka, it was decided to have 7 sectors with subsectors to include all of the priority areas, all of the 14 priority areas, and ensure much greater attention through specialization. While the organization first focused on economic and social issues, it has seen an increased awareness on security cooperation. Therefore, it is evident that much has been done within IORA to draw up and adopt measures and implement cooperative mechanisms. In BIMSTEC, the emphasis has been mainly in the technical and economic arena, with much potential for deeper cooperation in ocean governance given the nature of the body. Hence, further efforts that could be taken need to be explored. It is through the evolution of policy and policy frameworks that tangible progress can be made. In drawing attention to the concept of governance, it is imperative that greater understanding is possessed on the concepts, strategies, and frameworks that are used globally. The UNCLOS is the foremost ocean governance framework, whether through the Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf, the International Seabed Authority, or the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea. We have seen the creation of bodies with overarching reach, depth, and scope. It is through UNCLOS that all of our countries have territories that are vastly greater than our landmass, and therefore we possess greater opportunity. If I am to take the Caribbean region, known as one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, in particular the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, they lay much emphasis on the marine areas which hold an abundance of natural resources, including the rich biodiversity, living resources, both marine and terrestrial, and non-living resources in the form of mineral and natural products. The Ocean Governance Framework of the OECS includes projects such as the Caribbean Regional Ocean Space Project, which is accelerating development of the blue economy, the building resilience in the Eastern Caribbean through the reduction in the marine litter project, which attempts to collectively address the plastic pollution in the region. With financial assistance from the Global Environment Facility, the World Bank, and the Government of Norway, the OECS has been able to ensure a comprehensive ocean governance framework. Several other ocean governance frameworks have been implemented in various regions and have proven to be quite effective as the spirit of UNCLOS is safeguarded. The member states benefit and the environment is made safer and more secure. In 2016, it was Professor V.N. Attri, Chair in Indian Ocean Studies at the University of Mauritius, who called for a 4-step strategy to increase sustainable development prospects in IORA. He emphasized the need to firstly reinforce international cooperation in maritime science and technology as a means to stimulate innovation and strengthen sustainable development of the ocean economy. To secondly, strengthen integrated ocean management involving the greater use of economic analysis and economic tools. To thirdly, focus on initiating and improving the statistical and methodological base at the national, regional, and international level for measuring the scale and performance of ocean-based industries. And to finally build capacity for ocean industry foresight through the assessment of future changes in ocean-based industries. While these steps could form the basis of further deliberation of significance, as many of the other panelists spoke earlier, is maritime domain awareness, which is seen as vital for any effective mechanism. Incorporating it into the group's discourse would ensure, as noted by the IMO, the effective understanding of any activity associated with the maritime environment that could impact upon the safety, economy, or environment. This would definitely ensure a holistic approach to evolving an ocean governance framework in our region collectively through IORA and BIMSTEC. Multilateralism provides the space and opportunity for joint action. An overarching framework which brings together member states, each with specific areas of responsibility as found in BIMSTEC and with clarity of commitment as found in IORA, would foster a conducive environment. Such an environment would result in the region evolving a sound regional framework for sustainable ocean governance. In conclusion, distinguished chair, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in the century of sustainability. Due emphasis on our oceans, clear strategies, appropriate balancing of relations, and effective frameworks for governance remain at the heart of our deliberations at the Galle Dialogue International Maritime Conference. It is very opportune for Sri Lanka and member countries of IORA and the BIMSTEC to harness the goodwill that exists among our membership. This goodwill has been reinforced in IORA through the deliberations that have just concluded in Colombo this week. Member states are willing to cooperate proactively, especially when such joint action will result in mutually beneficial programs and projects, but more importantly, when it will ensure a sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanika. So, ladies and gentlemen, we heard three great presentations. I believe all the three speakers did justice to the topic, and they stuck with the time frame as well. That made my task very easy. So, taking the chair's prerogative, I like to pose three brief questions to the panelists. I will start with Dr. Vijay, if you are there. Now, we always talk about maritime order or maritime disorder. How do we find order through this disorder? Now, you spoke in length about gray zone operation. So my question, a brief answer from you, how do we find order through this disorder?
Admiral, should I answer straight away?
Yes, please, straight away. Straight away, please.
Thank you.
Can you say something
Well,
about this?
one would aspire for order, but then disorder is like, something which will be around us. And I think what we're trying to find a remedy for order or addressing disorder, gray zone is acting as a catalyst for disorder. Why we need a little more deeper understanding of gray zone operations, because states, actors will operate just below the threshold, and that will create more uncertainty, which will only add to confusion that we are actually ambitious, so-called ambitious order that we're looking at. I have no remedies, but I think a deeper study of gray zone operations will provide answers. I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Okay, the next question goes to Admiral. Admiral, can you share some thoughts? How does ASEAN, through ASEAN Maritime Outlook and through ASEAN Blue Economy Roadmap, envisage or make efforts to obtain or to maintain sustainable ocean governance?
Thank you very much for the question, sir. To my knowledge, ASEAN do not have a specific maritime outlook to a certain extent. We only have the political pillar. One is social, and then the other one is economy. I presume that the economy pillar will fit into this, your question that you posed, by ASEAN country work together in the economic context to bring all the players or all the state together and start discussing how do we address this sustainability maritime resources in the region. That's how I look at it, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral. Shanika, question to you is, how do you plan to maximize efforts as IORA chair in achieving collaborative enforcement for sustainable ocean governance, now that you are the chair?
Thank you, Excellency. Well, I think for Sri Lanka, having taken over the chairmanship this year, and we will be driving IORA for 2 years. So this is the time for us to take ownership of IORA together with all the 23 member countries. And we look forward to cooperating closely, not only in the ocean governance space, but also in the other 6 priority areas. Because in IORA, you have the 6 priority areas and you have 2 cross-cutting areas on women's economic empowerment and the blue economy. So we look forward to working extremely closely with all the 23 member countries and the 11 dialogue partners that are also a part of the IORA. Also, we look forward to taking into account the youth dividend. Sri Lanka will be hosting a youth forum in May 2024, where we will be inviting the youth of the IORA member countries to participate in a youth forum, where we will also be taking into account the sustainability of the oceans. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanika, for a very good answer. We can all expect some great things to come during the next 2 years as Sri Lanka holding the IORA chair. So, ladies and gentlemen, now the floor is open to question and answers. I do have Rear Admiral Mohammed Anwar Hussain from Bangladesh. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving the floor. Let me thank the panel, especially my question goes to Shanika. First of all, thank you, Shanika, for a very good deliberation. You have blended very well the IORA and BIMSTEC. Now, as Maritime Security Cooperation is an important issue, so taking the reference from ASEAN, ASEAN has a platform for the Maritime Security Cooperation, where South Asia still we do not have. Now, taking some reference from ASEAN, how do you see, as you have blended or explained the IORA and BIMSTEC, how do you see a maritime cooperation platform for South Asia between which can be better suited, IORA or BIMSTEC? If you get my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shanika?
Thank you very much. I'll see how best I can answer it, because I think you also have a fair understanding, because in IORA there are some countries in South Asia that are not in IORA, and there are some countries in South Asia that are not in BIMSTEC. So I think, of course, in IORA, as you know, Sri Lanka held the chairmanship of the working group on maritime safety and security until this week. Once we take over the chairmanship of IORA, we can no longer hold the chairmanship of any of the working groups in IORA. So this includes the priority areas and the 2 cross-cutting areas. Of course, in BIMSTEC, because the organization is rather small, there are just 7 countries. So the focus, it's more focused, right? So even in BIMSTEC, there is a very efficiently handled a working group on maritime safety and security. So as most of the countries in BIMSTEC, other than 2 or 3, are in IORA, we could see how we could, bring about closer maritime safety and security cooperation among the 2 regions. But having said that, of course, all the countries in IORA and all the countries in BIMSTEC have their bilateral collaborative measures in place. But I think now that we are in the driving seat, it's time for us to see how we can work more efficiently with BIMSTEC. As you know, there will be a MOU that will be signed between IORA and BIMSTEC in November. So we hope through that we could see how to collaborate more efficiently.
Thank you, Shanika. I think that's a great answer. But being the ambassador for ASEAN, I like to add a word or two. Now, ASEAN has ASEAN Maritime Outlook on Indo-Pacific, but through that they have operationalized that through ASEAN Maritime Forum, right? Now, ASEAN Maritime Forum specifically talk about dealing or linking with BIMSTEC and IORA. So I think we have an opportunity, because it is stated by ASEAN that they would like to work with IORA, IONS and BIMSTEC. So it is now up to the IORA chair, how do we link the two? Because ASEAN is a critically important region and the Bay of Bengal is. So at least let us work between Bay of Bengal and ASEAN and very collaborative manner, because now they have stated that they wish to work closely with the regional organization, and in that they categorically mention IORA, IONS and BIMSTEC. So Shanika has a great job to fulfill during the next 2 years, because it is there, and we need to work together with ASEAN, because ASEAN is a huge organization, 10 members, but then when you add dialogue partners, Admiral, it is huge, right? So would you like to add something to this, please?
Yes, sir. I would also like to share some of the context in ASEAN as an ASEAN member. What happened is that ASEAN originally set up is meant for political, for social, and for economic. But later on, as the time passed, we also set up this ADMM, ASEAN Defense Minister Meeting, whereby we bring along all the 10 nations to discuss about the security or the maritime issue in the defense minister meeting. Not forgetting that we also add up ADMM Plus, which including 8 countries inside. I mean, if I can recall correctly, China, India, US, and a few other countries to be in the discussion, ADMM Plus. There are a total 8 countries together and talk about all these things. Perhaps ma'am can find ways, because the chairperson for ADMM is Singapore, chairperson. Go through Singapore, then from there maybe can bring up some of the issue which concern to this Aurora or whatever context we have. Then from there, let the country discuss and bring it up to the ADMM. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Admiral. The next question, the opportunity goes to Commodore HRFM Tisera.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Commodore Ravi Tisera from National Defence College, Sri Lanka. My questions goes to the First Admiral Dr. Te. Sir, during your presentation, you mentioned that Malaysia is facing a larger ships density, which will having a negative impact to the marine environment. The similar situation is faced by the Sri Lanka in furthermore. We are having, because we are having a lot of ships density in our area, and we are having a huge threat to the marine environment. In same time, your presentation you mentioned about the protected marine areas. My question is, how effective is the maintaining of marine environment protected area, and what are the challenges faced when we are having such areas? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much, sir. For the maritime protecting area that we have, we use some local laws that we have. We call it marine park protection area. When we identify an area called marine protection park or something like that, the 3 kilometers nautical miles within the area will be no fishing, no boat, no anchoring, no diving, everything. That is on the very small pocket area. And then for Other than that, we will ask our, like I say, the local authority. Now we have already set up our own Coast Guard or Malaysian enforcement organization. These are the people, or these are the enforcement agency who carry out the enforcement to ensure all this area is protected or and been looked after. So that's how we look at it. Of course, we also, the Coast Guard will not be able to be there 24/7. So we need the local communities, the local council to stand in to be our ears and eyes for us to capture all this so-called, to prevent all these things happen in the area. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Admiral, and I sincerely wish that every country declare at least some area as marine protected area, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we cannot play with the future of the next generation. We can't rob them right under their nose. We need to declare the marine protected area, and that is a mandatory requirement in the SDG 14 as well, life below water. So the next question goes to Charini from National Institute of Security Studies, my former colleague.
Sir, my question goes to first speaker, Professor Vijay. I want to know, when you spoke about Great Zone operations, you also spoke about the legal ambiguities that are persisting. I'm curious, because of the legal ambiguities, there can be a lot of negative repercussions because law itself has ambiguities. So are there any countermeasures, like statutory measures that we can take to counter it? That is my question, sir.
Dr. Vijay, over to you. Are
Thank
there
you for
any,
this.
Yeah.
Yes, can I answer, Admiral?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. This is a very, very interesting question. And the question is that all these years we find that matters legal have taken a background. They've been always follow-up. You committed, something has happened, and then the legal battery follows. I think we'll have to be very, very preemptive in terms of trying to understand legal gray zone operations, and also try to understand the shades, or for that matter, in terms of the kind of environment these happen. And for that, we need robust legal, not only understanding, but a set of laws that will be forward-looking and preemptive in that many nature. For that matter, you have to get back to your national legislations. Law of the sea is with us. So a better and a deeper understanding how we can, and again, it should be given a high priority. Matters legal, how do we manage legal, political, legal, gray zone, on some kind of a combination will have to be really, brought forward and have a greater, understanding of matters of law. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. The next question, the opportunity goes to Rear Admiral M.H.N. Piris.
Good afternoon, sir. We heard during the presentation of the three organizations which are related to maritime domain awareness and the maritime security. Whereas my concern on the Colombo Security Conclave, which was initiated in 2011 as a trilateral maritime cooperation with Sri Lanka, Maldives and India. And later in 2020, it has renamed as Colombo Security Conclave, and which included some other members like-minded to join, and Mauritius joined as a member, and at present Seychelles and Bangladesh remain as observers. So this is a National Security Advisor level meeting, and all about 5 pillars. As IORA, you have the pillars of cooperation, 6, and here 5 pillars. The number 1 is the maritime security and the safety. When concerning Colombo Security Conclave, we have a responsibility of governing the Indian Ocean region. As such, similar to other regional organizations, BIMSTEC, IORA, and up to certain level SARC. So how the Colombo Security Conclave take into consideration into the maritime security cooperation in respect of Sri Lankan context, and what will be the challenges, as of now only 4 members and the 2 observers, and will it be a same discussion same point which we are discussing previously with the other old organization like IORA, SAARC and the BIMSTECs. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemanta. I think maybe Dr. Vijay is the best person to answer this about the Colombo Security Conclave. How does it associate or how does we work in collaboration with other organizations?
I'll take this on.
Dr. Vijay?
Thank you. I think everyone's talking about maritime domain awareness. And I have an expanded view, I should call it a marine domain awareness, as matters environment, ecology, safety, security, all these, including going underwater now. I think marine domain awareness is going to be important. The challenges are first comes to my mind is in terms of information exchange. Of course, information sharing goes on, information exchange on a real-time basis. If there is a crisis, oil spill is there, how far we can mobilize our resources. We have to mobilize in terms of where the first responder can reach. So it's just not being aware, it is also being able to respond. Whether there's a search and rescue, governance issues, beyond the legality, I think it has become, this is where convergent security strategies come in. We are there as responders. And amongst the Colombo Security Conclave, several initiatives have been taken. I think you would find that plethora of things. Let me also share with you, I've ran the Colombo Security Conclave, particularly concerning the matters legal for 2 years in India at the Gujarat National, at the Rashtriya Raksha University. And my interaction and with the interlocutors, I found that there is a kind of acceptance to the fact, notwithstanding some have chosen to be observers only, but in course of time, we would find them coming about. Particularly such issues concerning ocean governance, there will be very much. And so here is going to be technology, here's going to be awareness, here's going to be training, here's going to be capacity building. I think Colombo Security Conclave has taken very, very strong and positive steps ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. The next opportunity goes to my dear friend, Professor Dai Yung Hong.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my dear moderator. You see, this session is very active, and we have very heated discussion about this sustainability and the environmental protection in this Indian Ocean. So my question will be addressing to Delegate Leon from Malaysia, because we are talking about the ASEAN's role in Indian Ocean. You know, for the past 2 years, the trilateral agreement, the UNCLOS, the concept of UNCLOS, you know, everybody knows, especially from the Navy, the UNCLOS, Australia, UK, and US, they have this trilateral mechanism which can empower Australia to have nuclear-powered submarine. But you know that ASEAN is a nuclear-free zone, nuclear-free ASEAN. So may I just ask Leah, so what is or what will be the responses of the ASEAN major powers in this region to this UNCLOS mechanism? Because we know that Indonesia is a sea power, very close to Australia. If Australia has this nuclear-powered submarine, will Indonesia or Malaysia will choose to do the same, which can easily cause that ASEAN is not a nuclear-free zone. Okay, this is my...
I think that's a difficult question for the Admiral. So you have cornered
easy
him.
Or easy question or difficult question?
But need answers. Admiral, try.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for the questions. First of all, we must understand the setup of the ASEAN. What is the role of ASEAN? one of the major or so-called important understanding that we have among ASEAN is that we do not interrupt other nations' program. That's one thing for sure. So yes, we have voiced our concern to Australia about their procurement of nuclear-powered submarines. So we did, and then we also reminded them that Malaysia or so-called ASEAN country is a nuclear-free zone area. So that we have to stop there. Now the question is that Australia, do we have to interrupt or so-called make decision, hey, Australia, you cannot do this. We can't. ASEAN do not have that liberty to say, no, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So we do not interfere countries' plans, you know. So that's one thing for sure. Whether Malaysia and Indonesia will procure our nuclear-powered submarine, I will not be able to answer for Malaysia. I mean, we will not be able to answer for Indonesia, because if so, he have violated the agreement of non-nuclear proliferation in the country. That's one thing for sure. But at the same time, we Malaysia, until today, until this moment, I'm very sure that we do not have plan to do so. That's all I have to answer, sir. Thank you.
Well, actually, the recently concluded ASEAN Regional Forum and ASEAN Leaders Summit, they re-emphasized that, we reiterate our commitment to preserve the Southeast Asian region as a nuclear weapon-free zone and free of all other weapons of mass destruction. So we hope that ASEAN will live up to that and keep the zone free. So next opportunity goes to my friend Admiral Ravi Vijay Gunaratna.
Thank you, sir. And Admiral was my training officer, assistant training officer, when I was a cadet, and training officer also sitting here. And all three of us has been trained in Royal Naval College, Dartmouth, so I don't need to go beyond that. Right, sir. I'm not going to ask a question. I just want to do a small comment to the question which was posed by Rear Admiral Pires. That is the trilateral maritime agreement between India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, or now we call it the Colombo Conclave.
Security Conclave.
Security Conclave. Actually, this is something which is working well in the Indian Ocean. We have so many agreements, but I have not seen anything on ground the way that it was working. It has started long time ago when the three national security advisors, that is India's famous Sri Shivashankar Menon was the NSA, and Sri Lanka's Defense Secretary, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who became the president, was the secretary, and then the Maldivian colonel, I'm forgetting his name, he was the defense minister. And that agreement is basically for search and rescue and oil spill response. Now we have shown it that at that time there were two more nations which were ready to join us, two island nations, that is Mauritius and Seychelles. But when Mauritius tried to join us, we objected it, Sri Lanka objected it. The simple reason is Mauritius was there in the Human Rights Commission where they sponsored something against us. So we said no, we are not ready with Mauritius. But those things have gone now. The Mauritius is a member now. Seychelles is observer. Bangladesh also very keen to join us. We had 3-4 incidents close to our country where this agreement worked very well. That is the maritime disasters which we had. When there is an oil spill, at the working level, all three countries can work together because we have same equipment. Our equipment are interoperability is there. We can connect them together. And India is taking the lead because they have the biggest available resources for oil spill response, their Coast Guard. And it has been shown to the world. And when we had an oil spill some time back, India responded within 2 hours. Tell me any agreement in a regional agreement where a country will react in 2 hours to come and help to another country. So this is the good part of this. So let us not talk about nuclear, submarines coming into Indian Ocean and various countries having their ideas. Make sure that we stay at the level where that we work together for the betterment of the mankind and protect the Indian Ocean from pollution and again in the search and rescue area. I'll finish with the search and rescue area where that we help the Great China. When 350 nautical miles away from our country, when a Chinese trawler toppled, when you say toppled for the betterment of the army officers who are here, that it is like a tin which turned upside down. And the trawler was toppled. The crew was trapped inside. No other than the Chinese president, Mr. Xi Jinping, requested for the whole world to help. Everybody sent. And it happened in the Australian search and rescue area, 350 miles away from us. We, a small nation, we also had a ship in that area, given by US Coast Guard cutter. But they didn't have a diving team on board. We asked them to rush back to Galle and take a diving team and go back. And our Chief Admiral, Vice Admiral Priyantha Perra was on an official tour to India. He is the best diver, one of the best divers that we have. And our divers went there. All the nations came. They are going over, hovering over, ships are going round. The wreck, nobody is ready to get into the water and go underwater and go under the ship and see if there is any survivors. Because when a ship turns upside down, there are air traps. There may be living people inside. Our diver jumped in because the chief has said, you go and do it. And chief himself also a diver. And in the Indian Ocean, there are sharks. And they really like human flesh. And again, when a ship turns upside down, they smell the human flesh. But our divers, chief has said, you better dive, otherwise don't come back to Sri Lanka. They dived. They went inside. And chaos. Why? Diving into an upside down ship is like you are diving in a washing machine. Because ship is turning upside down, the flow is going, and there is total darkness because no lights, and there are passageways inside the ship. You can't go through that, and the divers got scared and came out. Called Vice Admiral Pereira. He is in New Delhi. We went, sir, it's a difficult task. You bloody idiots. First go down and close the doors and hatches of one side of the ship so that there won't be a flow. Went down again, closed. Now go and see. So they went inside, went to the captain's cabin, found captain is dead, his assistant is dead, but the bodies were taken out. And by that time, the Chinese vessels came, and then we showed them what we did. And within 6 hours of Chinese vessel came there, the ship went down into the David Jones locker, 3,890 meters down. Why? Because the air traps have diminished. So where? There were 12 bodies were taken out. And thank you very much. If the Chinese ambassador is here, he will be agreed with me. He gave a big party to our divers at the Shangri-La Hotel. And there were Chinese girls, 11 of them, giving flowers to our divers who did that. So this is what that we require. This is what we require. Not a fight in the Indian Ocean. Every nation get together and work for the common interest of our mankind. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ravi. I think we are going to finish on time, thanks to my great presenters, the three panelists, and the very active audience. So let me very briefly conclude the session. And we do agree that the ocean is critically important for our activities, not only for maritime trade, but as a source of protein, as a source of energy. Without ocean, we cannot live. That's period. Now, we are living in a century of talking about sustainability. And we heard yesterday, we heard today, unexpected, unplanned things can happen in the world anytime. I don't want to give examples, but it can happen. But the worst part is, in those unexpected events, there are unintended consequences also. And these unintended consequences are for other states which are not even party to that event. So this is the worst case scenario for many states in the world today. Now, we have a problem. Sri Lanka economic problem resulted in some unplanned, unpredicted events elsewhere. So therefore, we can confidently say that we need collaborative governance, collaborative efforts for sustainable ocean governance. We need that. So now, what do we really mean by collaborate? That is the government agencies, international organizations, NGOs, private sector. In all this, we heard how from the Crimario and the UNODC, how important the INGOs and the private sector in today's maritime security domain. Otherwise, we cannot achieve what we really want to achieve. Now, there is according to your theme, there is an emerging new world order. I think yesterday and today we heard so many things about this emerging new world order in the Indian Ocean. Are we ready? That is the question before us, ladies and gentlemen. We also heard regional problems need regional solutions. And therefore, I think there is a great impact now IORA can make. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude this session. But I request all of you to give a round of applause to the three great panelists and to the great audience. But let me also say the old adage, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. This is all about collaborative enforcement for sustainable ocean governance. So I request you to give a round of applause to my great panelists. Thank you. So we deserve an award for finishing on time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Admiral Professor Jayanath Colombage, for moderating this session, and the three speakers for presenting papers which encompass the theme comprehensively. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now take this opportunity to invite Director General Electrical and Electronics Engineering, Rear Admiral Viraj Leela Ratna, to hand over the mementos to the moderator and the three speakers. Admiral Professor Jayanath Colombage, Sri Lanka Navy, retired. First Admiral Dr. Tay Yap Leong, Senior Director, Comprehensive Defense and Security Research Center, Malaysian Institute of Defense and Security. Ms. Shanika Disanaike, Additional Secretary, Environment and Climate Change and Protocol. Dr. Vijay Sakhuja, former Director, National Maritime Foundation, New Delhi, we will be sending your memento and the certificate on due course.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.